Forests are one of the most avoided environments when it comes to Counter-Strike, and there are multiple reasons why that is. First, there is the gameplay aspect. Due to the open nature of these maps, the classic gameplay structure is changed almost completely. A perfect example of this can be seen in the use of SMGs and shotguns, which, thanks to their short range, stand even lower chance against rifles, especially ones with scopes. Utilities also take a hit, smokes and molotovs not being as useful as they usually are, but on the other hand, flashes work a lot more thanks to the lack of walls. Not only literal ones, but also the invisible ones, meaning that you can get almost anywhere on the map. Now, this freedom can sound amazing at first, but it not always is. Because I think the main problem people have with these maps is the lack of predictability. On normal maps you have at least some idea where the enemy is gonna come from. On open maps though, not so much. And you can see how this makes the game a lot more random than actually skill based. But on the other hand, Danger Zone did exist once. It was a pretty good example of how versatile the gameplay can be. And if I was gonna make a map, I wanted it to feel different both in terms of gameplay and the visual perspective. So here's the story of how CS Basin was born. Obviously, to make a forest you need trees, a lot of trees. And while CS2 has a lot of tree models, most of them are only used within skyboxes. And what this means is that they don't have proper collision or just look cheap overall. The only option I had left really was to make my own tree models. Now this was easier said than done because I have literally zero experience with any modeling programs. But due to the high level of precision Source 2 Hammer allows, you can literally model within it. You can even export whatever you create into an object file, which is an amazing feature. Anyways, my first tree looked something like this. It took me about an hour to make it. The texture for it is literally the first image I could find on Google. And plus, it's climbable. I did try experimenting with the branches a little, but in the end I've decided to scrap it. Tree number 2 was slightly better. Instead of taking an image from Google this time, I've decided to try and make my own tree texture. So I've spent about 5 hours cropping this branch photo. That is not a joke, by the way, it really took me that long. And after spending another few hours modeling the tree, this is what I came up with. Now, even after all of that, I didn't end up using this tree model because I found something even better. While I was trying to figure out what makes the trees move, you know, this swaying in the wind effect that's also applied to grass, by sheer luck I've stumbled across a feature called Material Override. As the name suggests, it can basically replace any material that the model uses. And as I was playing around with it, I've somehow managed to create this really nice texture that would be perfect for a tree. So I just decided to copy the bark from the old tree model and create some branches for it. Then I just placed the bush with a custom texture on it and it turned out pretty damn well. One big advantage over the previous model is, due to the branches being so high up, they don't block visibility at all. Then, to add even more detail, I added some exposed bark and some moss at the bottom. The last thing that I did was create a few variations of the tree. I did this by randomly placing branches across all of them. I've also created many variations of the bush texture itself, whether for new tree variations or actual bushes on the ground. And yeah, before you ask, you can climb some of the trees, but it's very situation specific because some of the branches are too high to reach even with the boost. Next up is the grass, and let me tell you, out of the 20,000 models on the map, 12,000 of them is just one grass model. Obviously I used the material override function here again and created about 20 custom variants of the grass texture. I've also utilized the tint feature in the material editor here, mainly to create different color variations for the flowers. At first I didn't change the size of the grass, which turned out to be a mistake. It doesn't only look better when you use taller grass, but you end up using a lot less models because you essentially cover a lot more ground with it. To make the map easier to run, I've disabled the dynamic shadows of the grass model. To compensate for it, I painted the ground underneath the grass model slightly black. And I honestly think it looks better than if the grass had the dynamic shadows. I was also thinking about doing GTA 5 styled grass parallax effect, but the models in my opinion look good enough on their own. Besides, grass like this would look out of place in a forest anyway. I did try to recreate it just for fun, and after many hours I finally got it right. The biggest challenge was trying to not make it hurt your eyes when you were looking at it.
Since I didn't find use for the parallax grass, what else could I use it for? And well, it's moss.
And this is how it turned out. It's definitely by no means perfect. There's no way you can blend parallax texture with a normal texture. I mean, you theoretically can, but it loses the parallax effect completely. Instead, what you have to do is blend two different faces together with height. The same thing I did before I knew you could blend three textures at once. Something that was completely new to me was creating my own 2D skybox. I always thought you had to use some kind of external program for this that would warp the texture to fit into the game, but as it turns out, it's all just one really big image. Now, the first version I did was created from my own set of pictures. Unfortunately, I had to scrap this one because I didn't take enough photos to go around the whole map. So I had to basically loop it twice to make it go all around, which in my opinion made it look kind of bad. The second skybox looked like this. And while it looks good from a distance, when you zoom in with a scoped weapon, you can see that it's just a picture.
And yeah, sure, the map could be set in a narrow place like this, but it would require to make a lot of non-playable areas, which just takes a lot of assets for basically nothing, meaning that it was much easier to just set the map on an island.
I did end up creating some really cool textures for the skybox though, like this parallaxed forest texture for example, which is perfect if you need something cheap for the skybox. Another reason why the map is set on an island is because it's really hard to define what is a playable area and what isn't when the map is set in a forest. In short, it's a lot less confusing when you don't have to think about where you can and cannot go. It's exactly the same reason why Danger Zone had islands, well, that and optimization. So this is the final layout of the map, and as you may have noticed, it's a hostage map. The reason why I went with hostage map is because they are much easier to balance than bomb defusal maps. I'm not saying this map is balanced, far from it actually, but it's the best you can do with this kind of map format. It's also the first map I've made that doesn't have any even ground on it, meaning that I had to find a way with which I could show the players which ground is climbable and which isn't. I did this by using the cliff texture on steep areas, which I think works pretty well. To make a ground like this in Swords to Hammer, you need to make a lot of 256 x 256 squares, then just apply level 3 subdivision to them, and that's basically it. Having the squares like this not only allows for more precise manipulation, but you can use a lot more blend textures in your map. Because as I've said previously, you can use only 3 materials in your blend texture. So as an example, you can see the top square is a blend of dirt, cliff and the forest texture. Meanwhile, the bottom square is a blend of grass, forest and cliff. Another thing you can enable is a wetness feature. Not only does it make the texture look wet, but it also creates puddles. This is especially useful near large bodies of water, as it saves you the hassle of having to create a wet variation of a texture. Now that I think about it, it's pretty ironic that we have tech like this in the game, and yet we don't have stuff like parallax displacement, which is something Hitman Blood Money had almost 20 years ago. Now, it's not like the game needs it or anything, but it would have made the map look 10 times better. For example, here's a default texture from Inferno, and here's the same texture but with the effect applied. The best use of this effect can probably be seen in GTA 5, along with all of its downsides. The way I understand it, it probably wasn't added because of performance issues. But hey, at least we got cool water physics. What's interesting is that CS2 has many leftovers from Half-Life Alyx. One good example is the shattering glass physics, which is fully functional except the material for it is missing. So logically, I thought there would be an option to make the foliage react to the player like it is in Half-Life Alyx. It would be pretty cool to see bushes move out of the way when you move through them, or even reacting to explosions for example. But sadly, the shader that would allow this is not available in CS2.
What I did experiment with was the water physics from Half-Life Alyx that is now used on a Molotov. I was trying to make parallaxed interiors with it, but sadly all I made was lava.
If you wanna mess around with it, the shader is called CSGO Simple Liquid. It's basically the only shader in game which simulates 3D environments, but that's for another time. Anyways, at the start of the video I've said that I wanted to figure out what makes the trees move, and after exporting some files, it turns out that it's a shader by the name of CSGO Foliage. You can basically make any texture move with it, but some props move more than others. I think this is because they have some sort of special flag applied to them that's making them more flexible. And I almost forgot to mention, but material override doesn't work well on trees. This is because their models usually consist of 2 or more materials, and when you use material override, you override all of them at once. And I think that covers all of the basic stuff that I've made on the map. I would say it took me about 150 hours to make it. I did skip some of the boring stuff because I know that it's not everyone's cup of coffee. And of course, if you wanna play the map, you'll find the workshop link in the description.
Bingo, bango, bongo, bish, bash, bosh. Anyways,
anyways, that's it from me today. If you wanna subscribe, feel free to do so. Hopefully the next video won't take another 2 years to make. And yeah, I guess I'll see ya.